Thank you. Let me find the correct folder here. So I have been charged with nonfeasance, unethical behavior, unconstitutional actions, misrepresentation, and chairing an illegitimate convention. On March 5th, David Hand put out a statement, and in that statement I quote, "So in consultation with members of CD7 board and our state deputy party chair and the attorney of the Minnesota Republican Party, we have concluded that no legitimate elections occurred on caucus night. Per Article 5, Section 5 of our state constitution, the delegates elected in 2022 will continue as delegates as no new delegates were elected." And this is in reference to the Otter Tail delegates. It says, additionally, the March 9th OTC BPOU Convention is canceled. If you were elected as a BPOU delegate in 2022, please watch your email for the BPOU Convention call, which will be issued at a later date. At the request of the CD7 organization and the OTC BPOU organization, this convention will be called and administered by the state party. That is David Hand from March 5th. This is from March 24th from Anna Matthews, David Hand's executive director. Quote, following Chair Hand's email on March 5th, the State Executive Board held an emergency meeting on March 12th. This meeting was called by Chair Hand. At the emergency meeting, the majority of the board voted to suspend Chair Hand's decision. The decision they're speaking about is the unilateral decision to disenfranchise 468 Otter Tail delegates and alternates. And then the statement says, on Thursday, March 21st, the Executive Board met again for their regularly scheduled monthly board meeting and did discuss the committee further. However, no new decisions were made. The date that the special committee will meet has not yet been determined, but we are aiming for a date in the next week or two so that the BPOU can still hold a convention with a called issue 10 days in advance with the 2024 Otter Tail County. On 4/1, this statement was sent out by David Hand, Craig Bishop, the CD7 chair, and Vance Bachman, the Otter Tail County chair. It says, please see below for a joint message from the state party, CD7, and the Otter Tail County BPOU regarding the resolution to the 2024 caucuses. On Monday night, April 1st, 2024, the special committee that was created by the State Executive Board met at Thumper Pond to forward a recommendation to the State Executive Committee. This special committee was composed of 4 State Executive Board members, state party staff, a party attorney, representatives from CD7's board, representatives from the Otter Tail County BPOU, and representatives who were appointed by Tammy Berry. After 4 to 5 hours, the committee decided to forward the below recommendation to the State Executive Board. And the first item in that list of recommendations is that no BPOU convention be held in Otter Tail County in 2024. One of the things that I would also like to state here is that in the appointing of that special committee, Chair Hand was supposed to ratify that committee through the executive board, and he refused to do so, stating that there was the fear that people were going to be harassed And so he refused to tell his board who was on that committee. I asked that question 3 times and he refused to answer. I then followed up with an answer then, what is the timeline for the scope of work that this committee is supposed to execute? And he would not disclose that either. So this is the document that I was reading in the meeting, where I was given 9.5 of my 10 minutes to speak. This is a letter that I received today from 9A House Rep Jeff Backer and 9B House Rep Tom Murphy. And this is what their statement reads. To Chair Ferris and members of the Congressional District 1 Executive Board, we are writing in opposition to the motion to remove Wendy Phillips as CD1 Executive. We are writing in opposition to the motion to remove Wendy Phillips as CD1 State Executive Committee Representative. Through our positions of State House Representatives in House Districts 9A and 9B, we have gotten to know Ms. Phillips, have firsthand knowledge of her actions that led to the removal motion, and believe that the proposed motion should be denied. Background information. As you are aware, the past 2 years have seen lots of turmoil within Otter Tail County BPOU that has caused significant ongoing division. This started in 2022 when the Otter Tail County leadership improperly added precinct delegates and alternates after the caucus had been held in order to assist a favored candidate. State party leaders made no attempt to correct this action. Then in 2023, 33 people who had been properly elected as delegates and alternates at the 2022 caucuses were illegally excluded from Otter Tail County's BPOU Convention. They were suspended during a secret meeting of BPOU's Executive Committee without any due process that included any prior notice or any ability to dispute allegations. I just experienced that inside that room. Again, state party leaders took no action to prevent the exclusions. Now we have the problems with the 2024 caucuses. This time the State Executive Committee did get involved, but the people appointed to informally look into the situation refused to acknowledge that a majority of precincts had submitted paperwork that clearly indicated who was elected as delegates and alternates that evening, which is the whole point of holding caucuses. The majority of the blame for caucus night's issues have fallen on the grassroots. The example is those who oppose the OTC BPOU leadership. However, it gets overlooked that the primary reasons for declaring the caucuses invalid, that is, the lack of PCR forms at each precinct and lack of properly filled out forms, rests with the Otter Tail County BPOU leadership, who at the 2 caucus locations failed to put out PCRC forms at each precinct table like is usually done so that elections could be properly recorded. They failed to confirm that each precinct had the proper forms and failed to ensure that they were collected and signed at the end of the caucus. Ms. Phillips learned of these concerns during her personal interactions with the Otter Tail County grassroots, who have been directly impacted by the events of the last few years. Based upon what she learned when she was asked to chair OTC's BPOU convention that was being called, she agreed to lend her years of experience and expertise to oversee the convention. The next the next title section is Alleged Authority for Motion. As noted in the motion, Article 4, Section 5 of the CD1 Constitution It allows for removals of an officer for serious malfeasance or nonfeasance occurring in the performance of the duties of the office or committee. While malfeasance and nonfeasance are not defined in the CD1 Constitution, the terms are defined in Minnesota Statute 211C.01, recall of state elected officials. Subdivision 2 defines malfeasance as the intentional commission of an unlawful or wrongful act by a state officer in the performance of the officer's duties that is substantially outside the scope of the authority of the officer and that substantially infringes on the rights of any person or entity. Subdivision 3 defines nonfeasance as the intentional, repeated failure of the state officer to perform specific acts that are required duties of the officer. Alleged wrongful acts. The acts that Ms. Phillips is alleged to have committed occurred at the meeting of members of the Otter Tail BPOU that took place on April 13, 2024. Ms. Phillips was not at this convention in her official capacity as the CD1 State Executive Committee representative or as a member of CD1. She was there in an individual capacity to listen to the concerns of frustrated Republican voters, the type of people that we need to be working for the party this upcoming election. Reasons for motion to fail. No authority in CD1 Constitution for removal. As noted above, in order to remove someone from being a state executive committee representative, the Constitution requires certain findings to be made. Without that, there is no authority for that motion to pass. For the following reasons, there is no authority for Ms. Phillips to be removed. Number 1, Ms. Phillips has not engaged in nonfeasance. The first paragraph of why Mrs. Phillips should be removed alleges that Ms. Phillips engaged in nonfeasance. Nonfeasance is a failure to do an official act. It is not alleged that she failed to do something. Number 2, Ms. Phillips has not engaged in malfeasance. Even if it was intended to be malfeasance, that would still fail. Malfeasance has 3 separate components, and none of Ms. Phillips' actions fall under them. A, she has not committed an unlawful or wrongful act. Ms. Phillips certainly committed no crime in chairing the OTC convention. It also cannot be said that this act was wrongful. It is not alleged that she violated any directives from state party or CD1 leadership concerning the OTC situation. Nor did she say anything that was disparaging to the state Republican Party, CD1, CD7, or the Otter Tail County BPOU. Like any other citizen, she has a First Amendment right to engage in the political process, and that is exactly what she did at the Otter Tail County Convention. B, she was not acting in performance of her duties. Ms. Phillips did not go to the convention as an official act in her role as State Executive Committee representative. She was there in an individual capacity as a private citizen. Just as not representatives, not every act Mrs. Phillips takes is as state executive. C, she did not substantially infringe the rights of any person or entity. There are no allegations that anyone's rights were substantially infringed because of the convention. Number 3, Ms. Phillips has not engaged in serious malfeasance. Even if the committee were to somehow determine that she engaged in malfeasance, this is not enough. The CD1 Constitution clearly requires serious malfeasance. What is it about Ms. Phillips' acts chairing a convention of a group of Republicans who believed that they had a lawful right to call a convention that meets this standard? How is that serious malfeasance? In no way did her actions manifestly undermine anyone. So A was no authority in CD1 Constitution for removal. B is no other lawful basis. It was asserted on page 3 of the motion that Ms. Phillips' actions in chairing the OTC convention were unethical, unconstitutional, misrepresentative of CD1 Republicans, and chairing an illegitimate, illegal convention, and that these things all form the basis for her removal. They clearly do not. Ms. Phillips did not engage in unethical behavior. This evidently was the first article that they called me out on. Yes, the State Executive Committee voted Yes, the State Executive Committee voted to form a special committee to look into the Otter Tail County situation. Ms. Phillips chairing the convention was not in blatant conflict with that decision. As stated above, she did not act in violation of any directive from leadership, nor did she publicly oppose a decision of party leadership. Ms. Phillips' attendance at the convention was also not part of an independent fact-finding mission that would result in her issuing her own report about the situation. She simply chaired a convention. Number 2, Ms. Phillips did not engage in unconstitutional acts. Article 9 of the Otter Tail County Constitution says that the BPOU Convention shall be held annually at the call of the State Executive Committee, the State Central Committee, the 7th District Executive Committee, or the BPOU. Note that the Otter Tail County Constitution does not say that it's the BPOU Executive Committee that calls for a convention, merely the BPOU. This is what happened. Members of the BPOU called the convention, even though the State Executive Board recommended that Otter Tail County not hold a convention this year. It has no lawful authority from the state constitution to order that a convention not be held, nor does it have the authority to punish a BPOU in any way, like dissolving it, from holding a convention, regardless of what the recommendation is. Ms. Phillips was invited to chair a convention, and she accepted. Number 3, Ms. Phillips did not misrepresent the views of CD1 Republicans. As noted above, there are no allegations that Ms. Phillips said or did anything that contradicted or disparaged CD1 Republicans. She has every right to attend political events in other jurisdictions. She did not chair the convention in her capacity as a member of CD1 or the State Executive Committee, and did not speak out against the actions of state party or CD1 leadership. Number 4, Ms. Phillips did not chair an illegitimate, illegal convention. First off, no state law was violated from her decision to chair the convention. Secondly, the motion contains inaccurate statements. As noted earlier, the Otter Tail County Constitution states that the BPOU can call for a convention. It says nothing about the leadership calling for it. The state-appointed special committee recommended that no convention be held. It did not mandate it, as it does not have the authority to do so. This convention did not lead to a multi-hour delay at the CD7 convention, and it certainly did not interfere with the congressional endorsement process. After 3 ballots, no one was close to 60%, and the last 2 ballots were virtually identical. So the closing statement of the letter from Jeff Backer, 9A, House District, and Tom Murphy, 9B, House District. The motion appears to us to be nothing more than an attempt by the party leadership to stamp out anyone taking the side of the grassroots from Otter Tail County. It is clear that Ms. Phillips' actions brought no disrepute to the Minnesota Republican Party, was not done in defiance of any directives from party leadership, and therefore has done nothing deserving of being removed from CD1 State Executive Representative. Along with Ms. Phillips, there are 24 county BPOUs and 17 Minnesota legislators that support MNGOP's decision to recognize OTC's 2024 caucus election results and want to see all elected 2024 OTC delegates and alternates seated. People in the political process should always have a right to voice their opinion and work through the political process to resolve internal disputes, just as Ms. Phillips has done. Disagreement should not result in being sanctioned. If CD1 goes forward with removing Ms. Phillips from her position, we believe that it will be acting in a manner that is no different than what we have witnessed the Democratic Party do over the last 8 years, attempting to silence anyone who voices opposition to them. We hope that CD1 will not follow that path. And it's signed by Jeff Backer, State Representative, District 9A, and Tom Murphy, State Representative, District 9B. It looks like the voting is done. What did they vote? They kicked me out. There you have it.
Keep going your speech.
This is traps. This is the railroad job.
Keep going. Keep going. Let's keep going.
This is a letter from John Palmer, who was the parliamentarian at the April 13th Otter Tail County BPOU Convention. And this is what John Palmer writes. I write to you as a longtime party activist with over 45 years of service to the Republican Party at the BPOU, congressional and state levels. During these many years of service, it has been an honor to serve as both the chair and or parliamentarian for BPOU, congressional and state conventions. In addition to my service to the party, my career path has led to leadership roles in the not-for-profit world. My titles have included president, treasurer, parliamentarian, chairman of Constitution and Bylaws committees, academic departments, faculty, senate, and government relations committees. The attached resume will give you a summary of my career. It should be noted, that 3 of my academic degrees focused on leadership and administration education enterprises, where the study of best practices in policies and procedures for elected bodies, namely school boards. My studies included an examination of both statutory and administrative rule law, including Robert's Rules of Order. In formulating my opinions on the Otter Tail County's election of delegates to their BPOU convention, their 2024 BPOU convention, along with Wendy Phillips' service as chair to the Otter Tail County 2024 BPOU convention, a thorough examination of the following has occurred. Constitutions of the United States of America and the state of Minnesota's Constitution, Minnesota statutes, constitutions of the Minnesota Republican Party, the 1st and 7th Congressional Districts, and Otter Tail County. The document prepared and sent to the Executive Committee of the Minnesota Republican Party in March of this year, and my personal observations made while serving as parliamentarian of the BPOU Convention. Options regard events within Otter Tail County, opinions regarding events within Otter Tail County. Delegates and alternate delegates were duly elected consistent with state law and the constitutions of various units of Minnesota Republican Party at the Otter Tail Precinct Caucuses held on February 27, 2024. The Otter Tail County BPOU Convention, held in New York Mills on March 13, 2024, was properly called and conducted by the BPOU Committee. In conducting the statutory and constitutional required annual BPOU, the participants, including the convention chair, Wendy Phillips, took actions which protected the Minnesota Republican Party from being guilty of violating state law and the possibility of loss of major party status. All the actions of the Otter Tail County 2024 BPOU Convention take at the meeting held in New York Mills were and are supported by statute and Minnesota Public Republican Party constitutions. Opinions regarding the possible removal of Wendy Phillips. The contemplated actions regarding Wendy Phillips are inconsistent with the 1st Congressional District Constitution. Since the specifics of how investigations and trials for removal of an officer are not addressed by the district's constitution, the provision of the Constitution that designates Robert's Rules of Order as the controlling authority in matters not specifically addressed in the Constitution, Section 63 of Robert's Rules of Order must be followed. That section of Robert's Rules of Order was not followed in any way, shape, or form tonight. The process required by Robert's Rules of Order, Section 63, investigations and trials, have not been followed in any action to remove an officer, Wendy Phillips, are premature. If the Central Committee wishes to pursue removal of Wendy Phillips from her office, the Central Committee should follow the dictates of Robert's Rules of Order. Since Wendy Phillips has been fulfilling her duties as defined by the district's constitution since her service as chair of the Otter Tail County BPOU 2024 Convention has protected the Minnesota Republican Party from legal sanctions, and since I have seen no evidence, yet alone a preponderance of evidence, that she has either by malfeasance or nonfeasance conducted herself in a manner that warrants removal from her office. Sincerely, John W. Palmer, Professor Emeritus, and he gives the address of St. Cloud, Minnesota. This is an affidavit from Stephanie Blomberg. She wrote me a note in an email, and it states this. I received this today at 4 p.m. She states, "Hi, Wendy. Attached are the affidavits from Andy and me regarding the BPOU convention. As we talked about on the phone, these are only for you and used regarding your position as state executive board member. We are grateful that you chaired our convention and trust that God's will be done with your position. Duty is ours, results are God's, as stated by John Quincy Adams." Amen to that. "We are praying for you. Blessings, Stephanie." And what Stephanie forwarded to me is a signed affidavit under penalty of perjury. This is her statement. "I, Stephanie Blomberg, declare that the following statements are made to the best of my knowledge, and the information I am presenting here is based upon my personal knowledge and belief. I live in the city of Dent, thank you, of Dent in Otter Tail County, Minnesota. I was born in the year 1973. I served on the Credentials Committee for the Otter Tail County BPOU Convention. I personally verified the certification of every delegate and seated alternate who participated in the Otter Tail County BPOU Convention. These names were certified either by affidavit, a PCRC form signed by the precinct chair, or by sign-in sheets verified by precinct chairs. I declare under penalty of perjury that everything I have stated in this document is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and recollection. Otter Tail County Credentials Chair Stephanie Blomberg. The next document states, I, Andrew Bradrick, declare that the following statements are made to the best of my knowledge, and the information I am representing here is based upon my personal knowledge and belief. I live in the city of Pelican Rapids in Otter Tail County, Minnesota. I was born in the year 1970. I served on the Credentials Committee for the Otter Tail County BPOU Convention. I personally verified the certification of every delegate and seated alternate who participated in the Otter Tail County BPOU Convention. The names were certified either by affidavit, a PCRC form signed by the precinct chair, or by sign-in sheets verified by the precinct chair. I declare, under penalty of perjury, that everything I have stated in this document is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and recollection. Otter Tail County Convention Credentials Member, Andrew M. Bradrick. This is an email that I received from Tim Miller, the CD7 State Exec Representative. I called Tim Miller after I received the documents for my removal, and he and I had a conversation. He told me over the phone that he thought that this was absolutely ridiculous. This is a short email that he sent to me. This was sent on Friday, May 3rd at 7:28 a.m. Definitions of malfeasance, nonfeasance, and misfeasance. Nothing you did rises to any of these. Also note, the key ingredient for any of these is to cause harm to someone. There is no harm here. In particular, the CD7 delegates and alternates from the 2024 list convention were not seated at the CD7 endorsing convention. The convention you chaired became moot at that point. If they want to condemn you for being kind and decent to people of Otter Tail, let them. And then he states down below that this is manipulative and abusive. I have a post that Jeremy Munson sent me this afternoon just before I left to come here. Jeremy Munson says, for the insiders, our state party chair hasn't learned from the grassroots dispute in CD7's Otter Tail County and is about to start another brush fire in the most populous BPOU in the state, Olmsted County, by having the CD1 chair also a taxpayer-funded employee of congressmen like CD7's. So we're talking about CD1 chair, Aaron Ferris, is an employee of Brad Finstad. So by having the CD1 chair, who is a taxpayer-funded employee of Congressman Finstad, remove Olmsted's BPOU chair, Wendy Phillips, from her role as CD1 state executive member. This is punishment for accepting an invitation to chair the Otter Tail County BPOU Convention. After the Olmsted County BPOU passed a resolution in support of the duly elected delegates. The party leaders are not learning from their mistakes. The party chair cannot grow the party by spraying Roundup on the grassroots. So this is a document that was sent to Aaron Ferris the night after they sent out my documents. This is a motion to remove CD1 Elections Vice Chair Lucas Severson and CD1 Deputy Chairman Nathan Peterson from their respective leadership positions in CD1 effective immediately upon passage at the 513 CD1 Central Committee meeting. This was put forth as a motion, and there was a second, third, fourth, and fifth to this motion. This motion was put forth because of all of the falsities that were stated in the motion against me. This motion was received by Aaron Ferris at 11:19, I believe it was. I could be slightly off, but before 11:30 p.m., 10 days prior to this meeting tonight. And Aaron Ferris wrote back to the people that submitted this document asking that it be put on the agenda. He wrote back to them and said that they missed the 7 p.m. deadline for this document to be put on the agenda. When they wrote back to him, when they wrote back to Chair Ferris and asked him where in the Constitution does it state that there is a 240-hour rule which would make the 7 p.m. cutoff date legitimate as opposed to an 11:59 cutoff time, he stopped corresponding with them and refused to answer their emails or their questions. If that is the case, then I want to submit that our state convention on May 17th and 18th is going to be illegitimate and illegal because the gavel falls at 9:30 a.m. on Thursday morning the 17th, and this was sent to my inbox on Tuesday, May 7th at 2:27 p.m. So if what he has said is legitimate, this is legitimate as well, and we need to shut down the state convention on May 17th and 18th. Excuse me. In addition to that, I sent 6 emails over the course of 7 days. The first 3 emails were sent exclusively to Aaron Ferris, and I asked him day after day after day to please send me the CD1 list so that I could email my side of the story to the voting members of the body that just voted me out. He did not even acknowledge receiving my emails. The last 3 emails of the 6 were sent to Chair Ferris and to the newly elected tonight, Secretary Isaac Bloom, and neither of them even responded to my email, let alone give me the list that I needed for my due process in my defense. I have been denied due process by Chair Aaron Ferris in CD1. And I received this email. These are thoughts from the parliamentarian in Olmsted County. By excluding the motion proffered by Elena Niehoff, Mr. Ferris placed a personal and artificial deadline on the acceptance by 7 p.m. 7 p.m. is not in our Constitution. When he replied that for him to accept this agenda item, that it would be unconstitutional, compounded by the decision to exclude the document for the removal of the 2 others upon an artificial deadline. And as I said, if this deadline is true, then our state convention will be illegal and illegitimate on Thursday or on Friday and Saturday, excuse me. And then he goes on to say, he has declared war against the people of this district that want our governance to be of the people, for the people, and by the people. Not elected officials, grassroots governance, borrowing from a famous Republican, Abraham Lincoln. So this is my closing statement. I have been very upfront about who I am, about what I believe, and how I make decisions. CD1 delegates elected me to serve on the State Executive Committee because they believed I would exercise due diligence in fulfilling oversight duties on State Exec and that I would represent their interests honestly and ethically. I value the trust of the people and I take my responsibilities very seriously. I hear regularly from frustrated Republicans across Minnesota who want to understand why members of the party's administration turn their backs on true patriots who are contributing time, treasure, and talent to our cause. Republican voters see the attacks on the base of our party increasing as establishment politicians try to maintain their power using retaliatory tactics like this motion against me